Thanks. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me on another episode of 24 News with Kuhle. Today I've got Mthokozisi Nxumalo, who is the national spokesperson of the Nkatha Freedom Party Youth Brigade. So how are you today?
I'm okay, Kuhle. I'm actually the national chairperson, not the spokesperson. The spokesperson is Mr. Hlengwa.
Oh, Mkhuleko Hlengwa.
Yes, he is the party spokesperson.
Okay, excuse me for that.
Yeah, but it's good to be with you and hoping for a good engagement. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, how's lockdown been for you and IFP so far? I know that you meet every Monday.
Yeah, we do meet every Monday. However, I think since the hard lockdown, we had not met then until we went to level 3, and then the party had to start its operations and see other operational matters of the party, because you know the NEC is one body which takes decisions in between conferences for the IFP. So if that working committee, I know that other political organization will call it a national working committee. So if you have that committee not meeting for more than 2 months, so obviously the functioning of the party will be in jeopardy. So we have subsequently started our duties, but also during our hard lockdown, we were busy engaging, teaching our people about the COVID-19. I just came from another COVID-19 test myself, just to acquaint our people that this is not something that is a death penalty, as far as it is dangerous, but it is wise to follow the protocols that has been outlined by government and ensure that we stay safe, stay home, sanitize and wear our mask. The importance of what the new norm is, and we're hoping that they will actually partake. So you know, South Africans are mainly compatriots. They do listen to government. So we have been mainly engaging our communities, ensuring that they become safe. And we have not recorded any deaths so far in our, particularly in my constituency. We have not recorded any deaths, but we do have some cases, as much as they are still very low, but we're still good. Yeah.
So basically, can I ask, what made you take an interest in making politics your career?
I never took interest of making politics my career. Professionally, I'm a construction manager. I started quantity surveying and construction management in 2008. However, I grew up in an environment where I'm generally a person who's outspoken, who has views. I think if I had stayed long in the construction sector, I would have joined maybe a union, because you know maybe I would have been a unionist. So when I went to school, I participated in student politics, where I eventually became the SRC treasurer at MUT in 2011. And we do have, as the IFP, a student wing, which is called SADESMO. It's the South African Democratic Students Movement. I became the leader of that organization at the institution, and further became the leader nationally of that organization in 2011, 2012. So upon completion of my diploma, I started to find work. I worked as a teacher at a TVET Technicon, teaching construction works, and thereafter I was absorbed by public works. So I worked for public works as a facilities inspector, and then also a structural inspector. That is when my activeness that is in me, obviously in my community, I started engaging in politics there, and I was nominated to becoming the chairperson of the IFP Youth Brigade there at KwaNongoma, where I originally come from. And when last year the party wanted structures and there were nominations for members of parliament, there was one male, one female, and one youth leader. So subsequent to that, members of the IFP Youth Brigade elected me. So fortunately enough, because the party had previously had 10 seats in National Assembly, we got 14. I got in the National Assembly, and when the conference of the IFP Brigade, the national conference now said, I was therefore elected as the national chairperson of the IFP Brigade. So I mean, I've been participating in student politics and in my branch as the IFP young person for as long as I can remember. So it's not a decision that I can say I took on a certain day to say that let me participate in politics. I've always been a politician, not putting it as a career. It has become a career whilst I have my other profession there. Yeah.
And I heard about this on SABC News. I heard you recently spoke about gender-based violence in Parliament, the virtual Parliament, and you spoke about the death penalty that should be brought back for various crimes around gender-based violence. So I ask you now that with your position in the IFP and being a member of Parliament, how have you used your position to promote women in the IFP as well as women that are not in the IFP? And also as IFP, how have you promoted to stop, or well, to have an end to gender-based violence?
Well, you will recall that I think it was last year in August where the IFP took to the streets in Pietermaritzburg.
Yes.
We were saying we must stop gender-based violence, and we engaged all our structures where we signed petitions, even with our branch chairpersons, members of parliament, councillors, mayors, and everyone, and gave them a clear mandate to say that as the National Executive Committee, we have taken a resolution to say, go and defend the women of this country. And we gave an injunction to say that if you are a leader of this organization, you cannot be in a space or in a meeting or engage anyone, even at your workplace, but not condemn gender-based violence. So we have continuously spoken about this. The issue of the death penalty, we have said that the country, in fact, needs to look at a referendum to say, let us hear South Africans, because you will recall that in 1996, that law was abolished because it was used politically by the previous government for killing people who are fighting for freedom. So there was an injustice at that time. Now we are saying, in Parliament and government has taken a route to go to public hearings on the land question, right? You find Parliament has engaged communities on the NHI. So why don't we then put a referendum and say, Parliament, we task you to go and check on the victims and the women of this country to say that how will they feel like if the death penalty was brought back? Because the injustices that are happening is that a woman will be killed or raped by a community leader or a community member. After 2 months or 2 years, the person is right back to molest and do everything to that particular individuals. So I think it brings about consolation to the person that has been attacked in their previous life. So that is what we want to do. And again, that will prevent not entirely, but it will reduce the number of the cases that are being reported. You would recall that even the ban, we also spoke about the banning of alcohol, because during level 4, level 5, level 4, we did not have a problem of gender-based violence as much as we had it under level 3, because under level 3, there was also unbanning of alcohol. Now, subsequent to that, in our previous life, when you will erect a gate at your home and put burglar guards in your previous life, you will be blocking people to come and molest your younger sister or molest your mother or abuse them in whatever. But now what is happening during the lockdown that we have learned is that when a person locks the gate or locks the butler guard, they are locking themselves with the person whom they are supposed to be protecting them. But those people are the ones who subsequently abuse them and eventually kill them. So that is why we are saying that it was an irresponsible act by government to reopen, to unban the sale of alcohol. And also we need to start engaging vigorously and say, what are the possible solutions? Because you will recall that even last year, let me backtrack again. Last year, Parliament debated gender-based violence. But what happened after that? Again, this year we were called a week ago, as we are quoting now, to debate gender-based violence. What is happening to the person on the street and who's being abused? Because they will watch TV, they see us debating, and then at the end of the day, in the afternoon, they get abused. So it does not change. Their lives do not change. They are subjected to an environment where they will be molested and killed each and every day. So we can no longer be silent about this. That is why we made a clearing call to our communities, to religious organizations, because even religious organizations now are implicated in terms of gender-based violence. We know that there are some pastors that are going to courts because they are said to have abused young women in their churches. But when young women start to speak about it, the church will say, no, we will humiliate the pastor. Or even the family, when it's an uncle or someone who does that, they will say, no, you can't do that. You can't speak about this because the family will be humiliated. So those are the kind of things that we are saying. We must robustly engage on this issue.
So, being a member of the Mineral Resources and Energy Committee in the National Assembly, how would the IFP's ideologies and beliefs better improve our failing energy provider, as well as improve the mineral sector that has been one of the major losers in the last quarter of the economy?
Well, there's always been a position of PPPs. Partnership, private-public partnership in the IFP, which we have said, once you have, monopolized energy to Eskom and not give the public or private people who can generate energy, so that we have sufficient energy to give to everyone. Because what is happening now, I can make a typical example of the city of Johannesburg, Eguruleni, and all other areas. When they do not have electricity, they will go for weeks or months sometimes without electricity because the monopoly and the state capacity is not sufficient to uphold in the grid. Now, when you've got a private people who are also assisting in generating energy for the country, it will say that the burden that is being held by government, sometimes when there are shortfalls in government, those who are in the private space have partnered with our government and are also playing their role. So subsequent to that, because obviously energy is something that is very critical in terms of the economy of the country, because if there's no energy and people cannot go to work, there's load shedding and etc. and etc. It says to you that people are losing jobs, people are losing money, and all those things. So if you've got people who say we want to assist, and we do have people who actually have those capabilities, but government has not made space for them to play a role. So that is what we have always been advocating for.
Okay, so do you believe that the youth has finally had its voice, or has finally been heard in Parliament, considering the increase of youth members being in Parliament, like yourself and Mkhuleko Hlengwa, Vuyani Pambo, etc.?
Well, definitely. It will depend though, because there's a very strong mentality of saying what is youth representation, because a youth representation will, in my own view, we'll have to define it in two categories. Because the first category will be that the youth is being represented in deciding bodies like Parliament, right? But the shortcoming that I think collectively we are all falling short of is that, are we advocating for the interest of young people? Because young people still are at the tail end of our economy. Are we a clear voice saying that young people must be prioritized in terms of reviving the economy, the skills development in tertiary institutions? They have all the resources that they need in order for them to play a role. But the youth representation, yes, correct, we do have youth members that are in Parliament, but I think the shortcoming now, the next agenda on the table, because you cannot win all the battles at once, but I think the next one will be to say, are we voicing out collectively youth matters that are affecting young people from our own communities and those who are in institutions of higher learning, so that they do not feel left out? Because some analysts have said that once the current youth leaders, once they have got into positions of authority, they forget that they represent young people. You know, so there is representation of young people and people who represent young people. So I think we must also try to bridge that gap, because when you say parliament has a representation, you are speaking of the demographical method of parliament, to say we've got maybe 20 or 30 young people, but is the representation of young people representing the views of young people? I think even young people, this is a call also to say they must also come to the fork and say, we want you as our leaders to speak on A, B, and C, so that we know that what we speak is not something that we just feel it is important. Because what happens is that we do not want young people to feel like we have sold out. You know, there's no point where we want them to feel like young people that they have deployed or sent into parliament have sold out the struggle of young people, because we understand we come from the same environment. So what are the challenges that are surfacing at grassroots level? They present them to us, and then we take them to those strategic places where they should be articulated and be achieved.
Okay, so I know that we mentioned or we touched on this a bit earlier on, but I want to just ask a question around this. So the IFP, alongside with a couple of other opposition parties, have managed to do this well, which is basically to increase its representation of women and youth in parliament. So my question to you is, when it came to the national conference in 2018, when you had to vote for who would be on your national parliamentary list for parliament, what were normal carrying members of the IFP, what did they want when it came to voting for youth and for women to actually be the candidates in that position? What were the visions that they shared to vote for you to actually go to that position or to be in parliament?
Well, it goes back beyond 2019, actually. It goes back to 1997, if I'm not mistaken, where the youth has always been activists and volunteers of political organizations, where young people have not had an opportunity to express or be represented. Now, when you speak of women and youth representation, there was a call to say that the people that are in authority are not sufficiently engaging on the youth issues or issues of women in empowerment and all those things. So young people felt at that particular time, and the women felt at that particular time, that no, we cannot surrender our power to other people so that they express our views, because we can articulate the same views that we want to be advocated for. So what is mainly convenient is for us to occupy space in those particular spaces and take position so that we can ourselves advocate for our own interests, because we'll be engaging young people at all spaces. Say, for instance, I get to go to universities, I get to go to branches, so I hear the cry of young people. So there should be a conduit between the young people and parliament and the national leadership. There should be a conduit for women, parliament, and the political organization. So it was the main thing of saying that previously these people I'm speaking of have been disadvantaged in the colonial days, because women were not even allowed to go to work unless they work for kitchens. Young people at a certain age, they will have to go to certain line of work, particularly if you are black. But we are living in a democratic dispensation that has said we are all equal, we have equal opportunities. Now, after seeing the progression of elections, but finding young people, finding women still outside of the space of activism, we made a call to say we want to partake. Let us fight our own battles, because we cannot surrender our revolution to other people. So that was the main thinking around it, to say if there should be a mixture of gender, there should be a mixture of age, so that all the views collectively are expressed. We also learn very much from those who led before us, who are older than us, who say, no, this is how things should be done or was done, and then you correlate that with what is currently happening today. I think even in terms of us having this kind of engagement, these are the initiatives that us as young people must bring to the table to start organizational methods of engaging our people. You will recall that even the the debate I had last week was on a virtual meeting. So, you know, that is not using the traditional methods of flying down to Cape Town just to have a 4 minutes debate, where it's something that we can just simply have over the phone and then you continue with your life.
So can I ask now, actually, now that you have just said something that just came to my mind, do you believe that when you said that not just having a 4-minute debate, do you believe that perhaps this is the way for Parliament to move forward when it comes to these small types of debates, that we don't have to now fly down to Cape Town or go to our specific legislatures or NSOP, that now we can start moving to a virtual society when it comes to small debates?
No, definitely. Definitely. However, let me just put this to you. It's not that you only going there, because obviously in the morning you go to your portfolio committees, and then maybe around 2 or 3 you've got debates, because in the day of Parliament starts around 8 until very late at night. So it mainly in the morning you will go for your portfolio committee for about 3 to 4 hours, and then after you go to the sitting. However, this pandemic has said that we must prioritize our times because of the capacity of the spectrum in terms of engaging. That is why now we are trying to make Parliament work even in the time of the pandemic, because you will recall that at level 5 Parliament closed entirely. However, there has been slow integration of letting people come back slowly into Parliament, and those that feel that they are vulnerable to the virus and that they are far, they don't need to go to Parliament for obvious reason. Maybe have your virtual debate for 4 or 5 minutes virtually. However, the functioning of Parliament still demands that, because constitutionally, if you have to, say for instance, vote on a budget vote, you need to be in the House, and you must be expressing yourself in terms of individuality. How do you feel on a certain vote that is being passed? So if someone else is not there, they cannot be counted. So it becomes very difficult to do it virtually, because now you find that the chief whip of a particular organization will be the one who says that, no, we've got 700 members or 50 members, and we're all voting for that particular position. Whereas when you are in Parliament inside the House, you use your own discretion, because you've got a gadget where you press whether you vote for that budget or you don't, or vote for that particular vote. So I think it is something that is being integrated too, but I think also it is something that we as a country have to start to embrace and try to find other means of ensuring that we do not spend so much money going to Parliament, and because it's taking from the public purse. Now the public purse is supposed to be used to assist our people in rural areas, in townships, to ensure that their lives become better. You know, so that is something that we should also look at. However, you must also recall that even the using of data, using of gadgets each and every time for the entire day will also look into the public first to fund that. So I think the government, yeah.
So another question I have for you is, as the IFP, your stronghold is in the KZN, and a little bit in Gauteng and a bit in Mpumalanga, around the region of your Piet Retief area. So my question to you is, how will the IFP plan to grow the party to other provinces, aside from just KZN and the few regions that I've mentioned as well, to grow into, whether it be Eastern Cape, Free State, wherever it is, to make the party grow bigger, aside from just KwaZulu-Natal?
In our last year's conference in August 2019, the party elected Honorable Hlabisa as the party president now. The theme of his speech was a province to province, city to city, and door to door, and etc. Now, what that meant was that we must increase the footprint of the IFP and ensure that the IFP does not only exist in the areas that we have mentioned. Now, last year we went to Limpopo for the very first time to engage the communities of Limpopo.
And they said that they've been waiting for the IFP to come to them and engage them. So we have started to establish structures there. We've been to the Northwest, we have been to Mpumalanga, we have been to the Free State. I think when the president of the country was announcing lockdown, I was on my way driving from Free State to Durban. Now that tells you that there is a move also in the party, and also in the Western Cape. We do have comrades there who have, because what is the reality of politics is that when you want to grow or expand an organization, you need to grow structures from beneath. Now, the founding principles of the IFP is that you must be a membership-based organization that is grassrooted. Now, what we are still doing now is trying to plant our grounds in those various provinces that we are speaking of. Before the lockdown, we were the following week we were supposed to go to the Eastern Cape to introduce ourselves as a party, to start building volunteers there, to ensure that people engage the IFP, know about the IFP, albeit the propaganda, whatever that has been said about the propaganda, but let us sell our own version of what the IFP is, and people are willing to listen, and they've been giving us an ear in all of the spaces that we have gone to, and we'll still continue doing that. We have also invited some of them into our media platforms where we engage them. They engage various leaders of the party on certain establish a series that is almost like this one we are having today, where we engage on even on Facebook with young people right across the country. It doesn't have to be a member of the IFP, so that we sell what the IFP's ideologies and what do we think and what could be the possible problems that our country is facing.
I have seen that you do have, especially now in the 6th democratically elected parliament, one of your members, Lizelle van der Merwe, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Yes, she's from the Western Cape. And also I know another member of yours is from Gauteng. Got it out of my tongue, just forgot. But I've seen that your party is growing. And my next question is, how should we as a country build up a spirit of youth of my age? Because I'm currently 16, still in school. How should we build up a spirit of youth being interested in joining politics and understanding the importance that politics plays in our society?
Well, for me, you know, if for any young person not to partake in politics is surrendering your power, because it's like someone who says, no, I've stopped voting because I don't see any development in my community. You know what that says to me? It says this person has given up. This person has surrendered the authority to take over the decisions that are being made in the country. Now, once you partake in politics, you become part of the decision-making body. Now, once our young people have started to understand the responsibility of getting into politics, because it's not about enrichment, it's not about the world, but it's about saying, this is what I want to see happening in my country. You will recall that just last month we celebrated the youth of 1976 that had an uprising in Soweto. Now, this does not say to you all those young people were politicians, but it was the young people who understood that the political dispensation of that time was not convenient for them. So therefore, they needed to play a collective and critical role in ensuring that they shape their own future. Now, this is what young people should understand, that if we do not take a decision now and make an impact of saying what kind of South Africa we want to lead, because some of us will be leaders of this country tomorrow, some of us will be president, but we must start shaping during the foundation stages, shaping what kind of South Africa will be leading in the next 50 years time, in the next 100 years time, because we are the ones who are going to inherit this country. So we need to inherit a country that we formed part of its formation during this time. So as young people, we need to engage ourselves in politics, not for enrichment, not to be corrupt, because one of the other elements that seems to exist in politics, or a perception, is that there's a lot of corruption there. But if we as young people just sit back and say, no, politics is corruption, and then you sit back, then you are saying you are putting a blessing to corruption, then let them continue corruption. So if you get into the space and say, we want to correct those wrongs, because some people feel entitled of saying that they went to the struggle, they went to exile, so therefore all the state resources must be looted by them because they, for half of their lives, they spent outside of this country fighting for the liberation. So this therefore tells you that the liberation was not mainly for all South Africans, but it was for their own convenience, as we are seeing today. So young people need to engage themselves in politics and start to have a voice. You don't even necessarily to have to occupy a political position, but have a view as to how you think should be the country should be ran. Have a view of how you think things should be done in South Africa, so that collectively we sit down. You will see that in the current pandemic, what has happened is that politicians have taken a step back, but have said, we need doctors, we need people who are experts, who are going to advise politicians, right, as to how do we deal with the pandemic. I was listening to Dr. Bandile Masuku yesterday and the Premier of Gauteng. They were also speaking, but what happened is that when the Premier spoke, he introduced an expert that said, this is how we must deal with this pandemic in Gauteng, and etc. Now, it happened in the same way where the National Minister, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, he said, I'm a doctor myself, but I'm not an expert. Let me pull experts. So we need young people who are going to say, I want to play my role in ensuring that we shape the country in the right direction, whether in politics or not. But the politics are the ones that govern even our thinking. They govern how things are done in the country. So we must have an influence in our respective spaces as to how that should be done.
So my other question to you is, what is the IFP Youth Brigade stance as an opposition party when it comes to addressing the problem of the missing middle in our capacity that are too rich for NSFAS but are too poor to afford tertiary institution education?
If you were to go to the IFP website, we wrote a document that said that no student should be left behind. Now, this says to you, initially, the IFP, in its previous time when it was the government of KwaZulu-Natal, we, through the previous President Emeritus today, we built schools that were catering for black, poor people, right? And those who were working for government, because sometimes you will have an influx of people who stay. I know that previously, if you were working for government, you will not qualify to get those loans that NSFAS will provide, and etc. But we have always said that if there is a need for anyone to benefit from a public purse, because we are the ones who are taxpayers. If my mother is a taxpayer and she feels that I'm paying tax and I cannot pay for the school fees of my child, the government should pay for my child tuition fee, because there's also an injunction on the child for a commitment that once you are done studying, you must pay back, so that those who come behind you must also benefit from the same system that you have benefited from. So we should collectively say, each one must help one, because what is happening and what has collapsed NSFAS is administration. Administration is very bad. Number two, even the administrator of NSFAS said so in the portfolio committee, to say that they don't have money because the governance and the administration, there's corruption in NSFAS is very poor. Now we need to correct all those things so that even the missing middle should be accompanied for. But bear in mind, you've got someone who does not have parents, right? You've got someone who have no means of income, and then you've got someone who's got a mother as a teacher. Now, who do you prioritize in terms of equipping in education? If you've got a 500 budget, right? They both have a right to education as per the Constitution. However, I believe that the mother can make a plan for the mother that is working for government, can make a plan to say, let me assist you.
in terms of getting your education. So there should be a bridge of gap and a societal conscious, because what has happened is that previously, I told you that I completed school in 2012. You will find someone filling out an NSFAS form saying that their parents are deceased, but during the day of their graduation, you find the parent there. You see. Yes. So I think it comes back to the honesty of us as well, and ensuring that we build a capacity of saying, let us become honest with our government, so that even the resources that are there should be sufficient for all of us to benefit from. And those who actually do not need them as much should step aside and allow those that are in need of the government purse to participate and get funding from NSFAS.
So how would the party's right-wing beliefs help address and assist the high levels of inequalities that we see in our country, since we have been known to be the country with the highest level of inequalities, actually? So how will right-wing ideologies assist us to decrease those levels rather, not increase?
Well, being a right-wing political party tells you that you are a cautious political party, because being right-wing or center-right, just to be to correct you, it is a center-right political organization that advocates for center-right ideological ways of doing things, because you do not want to mess up what you got during the apartheid days. Because let me make a typical example for you. You've got so much money that is going to infrastructure in the country currently. There's a lot of budget that is going into infrastructure. I also serve in the portfolio committee for public works and infrastructure. There's a lot of money that goes there, but there's no money that speaks to saying, what are we doing with the existing infrastructure? The existing infrastructure, you can go to Mpumalanga today, is deteriorating. You can go to Gauteng today, the buildings that are there are deteriorating, and yet we are trying to build new facilities. So it's going to be a continuous cycle of building whilst the other one is falling. Now, the gains of the struggle should not die because we are trying to establish ourselves drastically moving into the left, right? That is why we have said center right, whatever that the country was able to accomplish during the apartheid regime, not all of it, in particularly infrastructure, in terms of education, in terms of quality education and all those things. Let us build on that in order for us to inherit, because when one of the other things is that when you fight for liberation in the leftist means and crippling things, you run a risk of saying you are going to inherit a country that has nothing. You have to start as afresh. Whereas we have fought for so many years. Now, what does center right does for you? You benefit from whatever that has happened in the past, but also try to bridge it and ensure that you continue where the government of that day, what is proper to use, we use it collectively and ensure that we do not find ourselves in a divided society, which is racial as we are seeing it today, which is unequal as we are seeing it today, because we are not building on those gains. We are focused mainly on sidelining others and fighting the race card, which is not assisting any of the South Africans. Because even when you're speaking of the triple BEE, the triple BEE is not assisting the majority of the black people. It's just the few that are connected that are benefiting from that. You go to the NYDA. I've not met one young person who has benefited from the National Youth Development Agency, except those that are connected to the ruling party. So those are the kind of things we say. Center-right political organization must say we must trend carefully and scrutinize the responsibilities of government, ensure that the gains that we have gained as a country, we do not fall flat on our stomach. You'll remember that in Zimbabwe, when the former president, the late Mugabe, got into government in 1980, Zimbabwe was one of the wealthiest countries, but the drastic and leftist approach has landed Zimbabwe where it is today. That is why the IFP has always advocated for the center-right ideologies. Maybe in closing, I'm reminded by the President Emeritus. The President Emeritus in his previous life was a communist, was a socialist. When the founder of Malawi, the president of Malawi, I'm forgetting his surname. He says to him, but in a book written 10 years of Arusha, 10 years of Arusha, he was speaking because he was also a communist. Now, when our president got into government in the late 1980s, of course, Natal, he goes to him to get advice. Should we continue with the leftist approach? He says, if you want to collapse the economy that you have inherited, I inherited a Malawi that was proper. But through my own doing and pushing for an agenda, I've collapsed the Malawi. You know, so he told me to cautiously not to do that. And right there, he gave him a book. He wrote a book. I think you should also read it. It's 10 years of Arusha. I will even send you the document. It's just that I don't have it with me. But you read it and you understand the difference between the then government that inherited and the collapsed government that Malawi is trying to revive now. You know that even a few weeks ago, they were celebrating the victory that they of the elections, you see. So they're trying to do something that, because what is happening, what happens is that all these liberation movements feel entitled to do anything, and in the same sense, destroy whatever gains that are there. So I think there should be a balance between the past and the present and the future. And we are young, we are the future, we must find a balance that is suitable for all of us.
So you mentioned that you finished school in 2012, and I'd like to ask, because 2012, that was the fourth democratically elected parliament. So I would like to know that when, as you said, you have always been a politician, when you look at parliament now, where it is currently, and you look at the quality of the debate and the style of the debate and the introduction of the EFF from 2014, that do you believe that the introduction of such parties as the EFF, AFP does have SACP and all other parties, they are growing, do you believe that this is the right way for Parliament to continuously grow, to include minority parties which will address minority issues? And do you also believe the quality of debates have improved?
Definitely. I think, you know, in order for us to embrace our constitution, because it allows for, I can even start my own political party, you can start your own political party. So we all those parties are welcomed in Parliament. They can do as long as they respect the decorum of the House, you see. And Parliament is governed by rules. And if any member feels that the rules of Parliament are not being adhered to as the Parliament is progressing, they should raise that immediately, because that is why there are rules in Parliament. Now, the quality of debate, for me, there's always been quality of debate. It's just that I don't think we had previously paid attention to what is happening into Parliament, because we were not represented as young people. Now young people have started to show an interest in what is happening in Parliament. So in my thinking, I would say that even those who used to be in Parliament then had quality debates. It's just that we are not aware because we did not want to watch. But now people have started to grow in interest because they see people mimicking or doing whatever sort of things or disruptions in Parliament. Sometimes you don't know why people even watch Parliament. They are not even interested in the debate, because when there's a debate, they don't watch. But when there's a State of the Nation address and anticipation of a disruption of the State of the National address, and then people will be clued in. So you see, they are not watching mainly to see the debate, but they are watching because they want to see the disruption, and then we want to see who is going to surrender first, and etc. So I think there's always been quality of debates, and we must also embrace the court ruling that has said that even independent people now can stand for Parliament. I think by 2024 we'll be going to elections. Yourself, you'll be being voted for into parliament, not having to join any political organization. That is what our constitution should have outlined clearly, even previously. There was a Van Zyl Slaberg commission that was instituted in 1998 that said that, but government did not want to respond positively to that. Now they've been forced by the courts to embrace individual participation of individuals to get into parliament. So we do embrace that.
So what should make the youth of my age that are still in school join the IFP Youth Brigade? As we know that Mthokozisi, he joined while he was actually politically active from the age of 10. He was a mobilizer, apparently. So what should make the youth of my age want to join IFP Youth Brigade?
Well, you know, one of the things that makes anyone join an organization should not be the activism, but it should be the party's constitution and the statement of belief, of unity, of Ubuntu, of freedom, of solidarity, of ensuring that all South Africans are equal. They are treated equals for equal opportunities as South Africans, as young people. Now, when you read on the IFP's constitution, it clearly defines how young people should partake in the economy of the country, how they should be developed, how they should be capacitated in playing a role in the economy of our country, how they should be educated, and also reflect back as to when we used to govern, how we used to take over government, how did we run government at that particular time. I think that should put a spin into you to say, I'm very interested now. You've got a government that is corrupt-free, that has never been in a commission of any nature that spoke of corruption, right? Now, those are the kind of things, as young people, we must say, do we want a government that's corrupt, or do we want a government that is non-corrupt? And then you make your checklist, put all organizations that have been into power and say the IFP has not been found of corruption. Was the IFP doing nepotism? No. And then you tick your boxes. Was the IFP assisting young people in getting into opportunities? Yes. Is the IFP, who was the first member of the parliament of South Africa? It was Nxumalo at age 24. I know that some of them have come in now in 2019. But you tick all those boxes because it speaks to us and our own interest as young people and the future we want to see for this country.
So can I ask, with local elections coming up next year, I know that the IFP does run a few district municipalities, or local rather, like your Nkandla municipality. Does the IFP tend to grow outside of those municipalities and head for a metro like Durban? Considering the corruption scandals that were there previously, will that be what you'll be aiming for, to have 2 metros under your belt as IFP?
Oh, definitely. Well, definitely. You know, for any organization that does not have any aspirations of growing into government, then that organization should just close shop. I mean, you will know that the secretary of the IFP Brigade is currently the MMC in the city of Johannesburg, Comrade Mlungisi Mabaso. Now he's playing a critical role there. He's delivering houses, is changing people's lives there, because he's got that responsibility. Now, you know, I think that those are the yard. You know, they are stony yard measures that our communities and people should start to measure us as an IFP and say, these are the kind of leaders we want, that are interested in assisting our people, and even those spaces where we have not governed or where we are not governing, and say, let us give an IFP a chance to govern so that we see what they can happen. Because, you know, the one thing about elections that you've got only 5-year term. So if they feel that the IFP has not done enough or adequately enough, they can just vote us out. But it's an opportunity to say, can we govern and put the proper infrastructure of governance in those particular places to be improper? You will know that particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. KwaZulu-Natal used to be the best run province previously. But now, when you look at the AG's report, the fruitless and wasteful expenditure was at 6.5 billion rand. Now, what has changed? It was people who are handling it, you know.
So I think even us as voters, we've got a responsibility to say, why do we continue putting people who are looting and collapsing the state machinery into power? Because we are loyal to them and they are not loyal to us. They are trying everything that we have as a country. So I think that is an injunction and a responsibility of all South Africans.
And lastly, what should make the youth vote IFP in next year's local elections?
It's the youth voice. It's the youth voice and the young people that want change in their lives, young people that will want opportunities for themselves, not young people that will say, because you know what is happening with the current government is that you find the activists, the young people who get into space so that they could go to parliament, they could get tenders. You know, one of the other irresponsible things that has been said by the NCU clique of KwaZulu-Natal was that the schools must reopen. Now, what does that tell you? Is it because they're interested on the kids going to school, or interested in getting tenders that have to do with nutrition and feeding schemes and distribution of water tanks that cost 5,000 rand but are escalated to 70,000 rand a tank? Now, you find a sober organization that has always been constant and has always showed ubuntu to the South African community and has always ensured that they deliver services as per the government machinery will demand for them. So young people have got a responsibility to say whether I like it or I do not like it, but the IFP is the one organization that has always cared for the young people of this country and for the future of this country. So that is why I feel that even in our municipalities, I know that even Mayor Ntuli was arrested a couple of months ago for going out to give out food parcels to communities that are poor. Now, you start to wonder, why are we in government then if we're not going to assist the poor people? Even today, he has gone to assist other people. So those are the kind of responsibilities, and I will ask young people to read about the IFP, the People's War, read the bibliography of His Excellency Prince Buthelezi, read about the history of the country, not the twisted history of the IFP. Read about the IFP's governance in KwaZulu-Natal. Read about where we govern and see whether you'll find corruption or not. Then you will find a corrupt-free where there is service delivery, particularly in Mzinyati, there is a certain program at Zululand. So those are the kind of things that we must actually, because if you take a political decision to vote for an organization uninformed, then you are being reckless. That is why I'm saying those people that are actually watching and want to join the IFP, they must also start reading about the IFP so that they know it better. They can take the knowledge and share it with their beings as to why is it important to vote for the IFP.
Thank you so much, Mthokozisi, for joining us today on 24 News with Kuhle. It was really nice to have you on today's show. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to the viewers for viewing.
Thank you for
as
having
well
me.
as hope that the viewers, because I'm going to post this later on YouTube, hope that the viewers have gotten an insight in the IFP and, you know, get to have a broad mind when it comes to what party you'll vote for next year, which party you side yourself with. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. It's really been
Thank you for having me, Mr. Masego. Ngiyathokoza kakhulu mfethu.
Nami ngiyabonga. Okay.
Sure.
Thanks.